Hi everyone, Myra back with another installment of our story time, The Dancing Cats of Applesap. We are ready to begin Chapter 5. Get comfy. Melba stamped down the sidewalk in a fury. She stamped up Dunn Street and down School Street and along Orchard Street to where the Morris family lived in a house backed up to a middle-sized field. The more she thought about Jig's drugstore closing down and about the cats and poor Miss Tooney and about herself without a drugstore to her name, the angrier she became. She stamped into the house, pounded up the stairs to her room, and finding that unsatisfactory, too small for proper stamping, she stamped down again and out the back door. Half of her, it must be said, was horrified by what she had done. To have shouted at Mr. Jig so loudly. How rude, said a voice inside her, to be out stamping around in the broad daylight. Not the least like you, said the voice. Go hide yourself, the voice advised. Blush and look guilty, another voice whispered. You are sticking out like a sore thumb, they hissed together. What will people say? Quick, shuffle and be shy. Melba, however, was in the grip of a glorious anger which made stamping the most natural thing in the world and shuffling completely impossible. So she stamped out the back door into the yard, and there abruptly came face to muzzle with her brother Victor. There he is. The muzzle was the barrel of his shotgun. Its black nose was pointed straight at her. Out of the way! You're in the line of fire! Screamed Victor, only just in time. Melba lurched backwards. The shotgun exploded with a terrible blast that echoed across the yard and through the open field beyond. A covey of quail leaped from a hiding place in the tall grass to flap off at top speed. Goodness. In the following silence came a soft rustle. A squirrel dropped out of a nearby bush, shot through. Got him! Screeched Victor. He raced across to grab the victim by its tail. Melba felt dizzy. She put her hands over her ringing ears and closed her eyes. Poor squirrel, it was very dead. Hey, crowed Victor, running back to her. Don't ever do that again. Do what? Melba opened her eyes, but tried not to look at the remains of the squirrel dangling from his hand. Jump out the door that way before anyone can see you. I almost blew your head off. I know, choked Melba. I'm still shaking. This seemed to please Victor. Better get out of here now, too, he said manfully. I'll be doing some more shooting, I guess. I've got some friends coming over. We're going after that groundhog in the field. Do you have to? Asked Melba weakly. Guess so. He's been in the garden. Melba looked at her feet. Better get going, urged Victor, waving a bloody hand. Squirrel blood. Melba went. She crept back up to her room and lay down on her bed, her heart pounding. Her arms shook. She felt terrible. Jig's drugstore was going out of business, and suddenly there wasn't a drop of anger left in her. Melba puts the phone down with a bang. She leaps to her feet and walks in a fast circle around the living room. Then she sits down by the phone again and rubs her elbow. Maybe calling the Guinness Book of World Records isn't as easy as it sounds at first, even when you've figured out the area code and know the telephone number by heart. Oh, be quiet, says Melba. I was just thinking about Victor. I got blown over pretty easily back then, by him and everybody else. Makes me mad to think how that shotgun blast knocked me out just when I was getting worked up enough about Jig's drugstore to do something about it. All I could do instead was cry. I cried on my bed with my head under the pillow, and all the time there were these blasts and pops going off in the background. That was Victor out in the field with his friends. They were shooting at the groundhog and a whole lot of innocent, terrified rabbits. The more I thought about those rabbits, the more I thought about how Miss Tooney's cats would be out in the streets soon, getting shot at and kicked around, with nobody to love them. I felt like one of those cats myself, sort of homeless and scared. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see Victor's shotgun pointed straight at me, and I'd run, in my mind, up a tree. But even trees aren't safe against shotguns. I guess I must have run around like that in my mind for about 2 hours, trying to think of good places to hide. In the end, I fell asleep, but there was no place good enough to be completely safe. Melba pauses, fiddling with the telephone cord. Do you have a copy of the Guinness Book of World Records around anywhere? She asked, suddenly changing the subject. I haven't read it lately. Maybe they've already had a section on dancing cats. Living in a small town like Applesap, New York, I don't always hear about what's going on in the world. I was thinking, if those cats turned up here, they've probably turned up in other places too. A place like New York City has probably had smarter and fancier dancing cats for years. If that's true, I sure would look silly calling up the Guinness Book about a plain old thing that happens every day. I'm tired, said Melba, getting up again, but slowly this time. I think I'll go outside and sit on the porch, if you'll excuse me. I need to be alone to think this problem out. Chapter 6. Victor's shotgun blast certainly had knocked the stuffing out of Melba. In gloom, she stayed in her room most of the next day, which was Saturday. The sky had turned an evil gray during the night. Rain was falling. Out on the front porch lay the carcasses of 5 skinny rabbits. Melba tried not to look at them when she came down for breakfast. Victor was out on the porch too, skinning a 6th and keeping an eye on the muddy vegetable garden that ran along the side of the house. Miraculously, the groundhog had escaped the shootout the day before. I bet he thinks he's some smart hog, grumbled Victor. How do you know he's not a girl? Asked Melba from the kitchen. It was still raining at 4 o'clock when Melba left her room again and came down to pick an umbrella out of the hall closet. There isn't much that's worse than sitting around a house that has a lot of dead rabbits laying just outside the front door. Melba went out by the back door. She didn't intend to go to Jig's. She intended never to look at that drugstore again. But in her misery she splashed down Orchard Street and plodded along School Street and shuffled up Dunn Street until, almost by accident, she found herself standing in front of Jig's drugstore. It was closed. Outside, the rain had beaten the store's wooden shingles to a sodden black. Inside, all the lights were out. Melba edged up to the grimy window and peered in. Nothing was stirring. She tried the wooden door. It was locked. No, it wasn't. The door opened. Melba was standing hesitantly in the open doorway, a little afraid of running into Mr. Jiggs, when up from behind the soda fountain counter popped Miss Tooney like a fuzzy piece of toast, and up with her sprang One-Eyed Butch and about 20 other cats. 20 more leapt suddenly from behind the candy rack, and then another 30 at least peeped out from 30 other hiding places around the store. There's another picture. Well, shrilled Miss Tooney in her most ill-tempered voice, it's about time you got here. We've been waiting for hours. But how did you know I was coming? Asked surprised Melba, when she had been invited in and was sitting astride her usual stool. What on earth do you mean? Squawked Miss Tooney. We knew you were coming because of the plan. What is it, by the way? We're all dying to know how you're going to save us. At this, the cats moved in from all directions to surround Melba. Some rested on her feet, others crowded under the counter near her elbows. 199 cat eyes looked expectantly at her, and Miss Tooney's face stared out from the middle of them. What plan? Gasped Melba. Now that really is the limit, howled Miss Tooney. You go stamping around the store telling Mr. Jiggs he's a spineless worm, which he is, of course, for selling out without a fight, and then you go stamping off in a perfect fury, and now you are back again with nothing to show for it all. When people get angry, they usually do something about it. I guess you're about as spineless as everyone else around here. Come along, cats, said Miss Tooney, waving them off with an arm. False alarm. Let's get packing. Jiggs wants the whole place in boxes by Monday morning sharp. That's when he signs the final sale papers, she added, turning to Melba. He's overseeing the dry cleaners now to negotiate the price. Hey, wait a minute, shouted Melba. I didn't know I was supposed to make a plan. Who else? Shrugged Miss Tooney. You as good as said you would. So sorry. Melba blushed and gulped. Then, since they were slipping down anyway, she took off her glasses and began to polish them hard on a shirt tail. That's the end of Chapter 6. Tune in next time, and we'll continue our story of the dancing cats of Applesap. Thanks for listening, everybody. Meow for now.